The Third Legion, known as the Emperor's Children, is the proud legion of the first founding, famous for its drive to achieve perfection in all its actions. They have always strived to be an example in the arts of war, models of martial virtue and excellence, despising those who failed to meet their standards, which they considered unattainable. This led them to seek perfection in war as an unstoppable and swift force, whose battles were predestined victories, achieved through a combination of strategic planning and impeccable execution. Their attitudes and manners caused some to label them as arrogant and vain long before the heresy. It was in recognition of that drive that the Emperor granted the warriors of the Third Legion the right to bear the Imperial Eagle, a unique honor at that time. After countless accolades and praises, many declared that the Third Legion was the embodiment of what the Emperor intended the Astartes legions to be: noble in their actions, outstanding in all challenges, strong, civilized, firm in their purpose, and loyal to the core. The Legion recognized the Emperor as the very pinnacle of the perfection to which Fulgrim aspired. That is why the Third Legion received the name Emperor's Children.
The Third Legion was created along with the other legions during the final phases of the Unification Wars, and many of its warriors came from the populations of Europa. The European nobles selected the best and offered them to the Emperor of Mankind as tribute or penance. Among them were sons from every noble family. According to some imperial sages of the time, this gave the legion its name as Emperor's Children, reaffirmed years later by its primarch after his rediscovery. Some families offered this tithe reluctantly, while others cooperated sincerely with the imperial cause. For example, it is said that the house of Loculo of Comarg sent all its sons to become Astartes and voluntarily delivered the firstborn of each subsequent generation to the Third Legion. Decades later, other houses followed suit, filling the ranks of the Third with noble blood and forming a martial brotherhood whose lineage was considered the best of the best. It was after the Proximan betrayal at the beginning of the Great Crusade that the Third Legion was granted the exclusive right to bear the Eagle, the Emperor's personal banner. It was the only Space Marine Legion authorized to display the Eagle on weapons and armor until after the Dorn Heresy, when the practice was extended to all legions that had remained loyal to the Imperium. After the unification of Terra and the Treaty of Mars, the Selenar gene rights of Luna and the Martian Pact, or Mechanicum, began producing and equipping Space Marines at an unprecedented rate, and the legions began to expand to meet the demands of the new and vast war in the stars. As the gene forges of Luna created recruits for all the Astartes legions, a portion of the Third Legion's gene seed reserve was sent to Luna for establishment. Then an unfortunate event occurred. It is unclear what happened. Some claim that elements of Selenite cults hijacked a defense laser turret and destroyed the ship carrying the Legion's gene seed. Others say the ship lost control and crashed while attempting to dock. There are even those who maintain that it simply disappeared. The loss of the Legion's gene seed reserves was a harsh blow, but it would not have endangered its survival if a second catastrophe had not occurred. It was discovered that a viral plague had suddenly infected several gene seed vaults on Terra. Its cause and origin are unknown. The biomagi of the Mechanicum, tasked with overseeing the gene reserves, attempted to contain it while the infection threatened to destroy in a matter of hours what had taken a century to build. Every means was employed to halt the spread, but it was impossible. Only the intervention of the Emperor's incomparable genius managed to purge the plague. Although many legions suffered losses from this unknown attack, the plague had completely destroyed the remaining stock of the Third Legion's gene seed. From that moment on, the Legion began to decline. While other legions grew in number and glory with the momentum of the Great Crusade, the Third withered. The only way to replace losses was by extracting progenoid glands from the dead. Without the Legion's primarch, the Emperor and his gene rights could only rebuild the Legion's gene seed reserves very slowly. As that process progressed, the Legion's effective strength diminished with each battle. It became clear that the Third would become extinct long before its gene seed reserves were reconstituted. The Legion's doom seemed inevitable until the Primarch Fulgrim was rediscovered. It should also be clarified that the Legion suffered from tumors. The gene seeds they had available caused tumors in a large part of their legionaries, which in many cases killed them. Thus, before finding their Primarch, almost the entire Legion was already sick.
The planet Chemos, like many before the Emperor's reunification, had been colonized during humanity's first expansion. But after the events of the Cybernetic Revolt and the Age of Strife, it had remained isolated for centuries. When Fulgrim arrived on the planet, the inhabitants of Chemos were dangerously close to extinction, clinging to survival, endlessly recycling their increasingly scarce reserves of food and water. 5 decades later, the Emperor finally set foot on Chemos, and it is a testament to Fulgrim's exceptional skills that he had transformed it from a society on the brink of extinction into a prosperous world. They no longer lived day to day. Fulgrim had given the population of Chemos hope for the future. Upon meeting his father and hearing about the Great Crusade to gather the lost human worlds into an empire that would span the galaxy, Fulgrim wanted to join and fulfill his duty to his father. Back on Holy Terra, Fulgrim was presented to his legion. Due to the catastrophe with its gene seed, the legion had only 200 members. In front of numerous Terran dignitaries and even the Emperor himself, Fulgrim addressed his warriors and told them, "We are his children. Let all who look upon us know this. Only in imperfection can we fail him. We are the Emperor's children, and we shall not fail him." The people and the Emperor himself were astonished and amazed by Fulgrim's speech. The Emperor himself officially granted them the name Emperor's Children, and allowed the imperial eagle insignia to be borne by them. Thus began the arduous process of rebuilding the legion to full combat strength. In his eagerness to prove his worth, Fulgrim offered his legion for service as soon as possible. Unfortunately, they were so few that they had to accompany another force, the Imperial Fists, instead of the Lunar Wolves. It was Rogel Dorn who had to instruct Fulgrim. The first meeting between the two brothers, Dorn and Fulgrim, was friendly, but it didn't last long. A clash of personalities arose from Fulgrim's ambition, who declared that he and not Dorn should be the Praetorian of Terra. Fulgrim clearly saw himself as the favored son, and when the Emperor's children finally reached their full strength, they would take their rightful place. When a ceremony was held on the world of Pelfan, expectations within the Legion were high, as they believed they would be granted the position of Praetorians. Instead, they were simply granted their own expedition in the Great Crusade, which provoked outrage among the Emperor's children. But Fulgrim stood up, silenced his sons, and thanked his father for the honor.
Sometime later, the Imperium discovered a threat called the Laer. Imperial planners had predicted that any force attacking them would be massacred. Since the Laer were isolationists and didn't seem to want to leave their planet, they had been left in peace. However, Fulgrim saw them as the ultimate test for his legion. He would exterminate them, and moreover, he would complete the task in one standard solar month. The Emperor's children discovered that the Laer had adapted and specialized their bodies to such an extent that they were barely recognizable as the same species. The war exacted a terrible cost on both sides when weapons of unimaginable power were unleashed. The skills of the Legion's apothecaries shone, performing true miracles to keep their brothers alive and in combat. The Emperor's children hunted down every last Laer to extinction. The final Laer was eliminated in one of their blasphemous temples 3 days before the month ended. Despite the area being filled with stories of its unsettling beauty, Fulgrim refused to explore the place, claiming he had no desire to contemplate the culture of those Xenos or their superstitions. Instead, he bombarded the planet until any trace of the Laer disappeared, leaving only dust. After completing his personal crusade, Fulgrim addressed his entire legion. He stated that the campaign had proven that they had indeed achieved the perfection expected by the Emperor. Driven to constantly change and adapt, the Laer had twisted their minds and bodies until they became unrecognizable. However, the Emperor's children had defeated them thanks to their unsurpassed skill and devotion to purity. In the same way, the Legion must guard against diluting the state of perfection that had been granted to them. That day, the Emperor's children became a bastion of constancy in a galaxy of constant change. Wait a minute. And where is Fabius Bile?
Despite Fulgrim's declaration that the Emperor's children had achieved perfection during the campaign against the Laer, a small group within the Legion challenged what their Primarch had affirmed. The most prominent were a group of apothecaries who experimented on their wounded brothers. These perversions included rewiring the brain's pleasure centers and even using xenobiological material from the Laer. These unforgivable blasphemies were quickly eradicated during the journey to Istvon. The leader, a talented apothecary named Fabius, took the easy way out instead of answering to Fulgrim for his crimes. He ingested a brew or liquid that, when they found him in Fabius's chamber, had rotted him into an organic stew inside his armor. If he had survived, Fabius's punishment would undoubtedly have been worse.
As soon as the Emperor's children reached their apotheosis, they received an urgent astropathic communication about the Ultramarines. Guilliman's Legion had succeeded in bringing much of the far galactic east into the Imperium, but now, by right of conquest, they claim the area as their own. Instead of being incredulous at the possibility that one of his brothers could turn his back on the Emperor, Fulgrim received the news with satisfaction. It reinforced his sense of superiority and gave him the opportunity to test his legion against a true challenge, other Astartes. The only thing that bothered him at the time was knowing that the forces sent to punish the Ultramarines would be commanded by his adversary, Rogel Dorn. The Emperor's children set course for Istvon's system. It was the site of Guilliman's latest addition to his Ultramar segmentum, and both the rebel Primarch and much of his legion were present on the 5th planet. 7 legions were called to Istvon: the Imperial Fists, Iron Hands, Salamanders, Dark Angels, Emperor's Children, World Eaters, and Raven Guard. The troops were organized to descend upon the planet, surround, devastate, and demoralize the defenders. The Emperor's Children, World Eaters, and Raven Guard were tasked with launching the first strike. By Dorn's order, the 3 legions descended from orbit, only to find themselves caught in an ambush. Far from finding the Ultramarines' legion demoralized, they encountered the defenders well-entrenched, heavily armed, and highly organized. Landing craft were shredded by anti-aircraft fire, and drop pods were incinerated before they could open their hatches. Under the direction of the Emperor's children, the mutilated remnants of the 2 legions regrouped, only to discover the true depth of the betrayal. Their allies also opened fire on them. The communication channels filled with pleas to cease fire, and it was Fulgrim who first guessed the terrible truth. It was no accident. Dorn had betrayed them. The Emperor's children unleashed their wrath on the traitors present, and Fulgrim led what remained of his personal retinue against the Iron Hands Primarch. Fulgrim had considered Ferrus Manus more brother than rival, so the betrayal was even more painful. The Legion's records state that Fulgrim managed to mortally wound Ferrus and even sever one of his legendary metal hands. Thanks to their audacity, skill, and determination, a small fraction of the 3 legions escaped back to orbit to spread the news of Dorn's great betrayal. Despite their brutality, the World Eaters impressed Fulgrim on the battlefield, forging genuine bonds of friendship that endured to this day. Corax and his Raven Guard departed, as was their custom, silently and swiftly toward their homeworld. Though it pained Fulgrim to do so, he knew their numbers were so reduced that the only option was to return to their homeworld and rebuild the Legion for the counterattack. The Emperor's children had already risen from the ashes once and would do so again. Despite their betrayal, and having been close to extinction on Istvon, Fulgrim's assertion that his Legion had achieved perfection remained unshakable. If anything, those events reinforced his conviction. They could not have been corrupted or defeated in a fair fight, so Dorn had tried, and failed, to annihilate them numerically. The Dorn Heresy came to a bloody end before they could properly rebuild their losses. The greatest victim was the Emperor himself, reduced to little more than a ghost on the Golden Throne. Though Fulgrim never spoke openly of it, he mourned the loss of his father, and perhaps even his decision to rebuild the Legion instead of trying to return to Terra to fight. Dorn, the arch-traitor, had died, and yet other traitor Primarchs still lived. The drive to locate them and seek vengeance was powerful, but Fulgrim never compromised his principles to bolster his ranks. Only the best recruits were admitted into the Emperor's Children, which maintained their high standards but left the Legion lamentably small. For this reason, they fought alongside other loyal legions, first with the World Eaters, where they saved the planet Scalathax from the Salamanders, and eventually participated in the Abaddon Crusades. The counterattack was satisfying. Fulgrim was horrified by the shortcuts other legions had taken to replace their losses, particularly the new and inferior equipment that was being hastily produced. Though they followed the slow pace at which the Emperor's Children could rebuild their ranks, Fulgrim trusted he had made the right decision. They would not compromise their principles or their purity. Since the dark days of the heresy, the Emperor's Children have dedicated themselves to the protection of the Imperium. While they combat Xenos incursions and conquer worlds so that more systems join the Imperium, they are rarely considered a worthy challenge. Their true passion is the opportunity to test themselves against the traitor legions, and especially against those who betrayed them on Istvon. It was Fulgrim who proposed a crusade against Raboti Guilliman, and who considered it his duty to end the man who had unleashed the heresy. It was Fulgrim who led the loyal legions into the hostile territory of the Ultramar Segmentum, and it was Fulgrim who defeated Guilliman on the world of Prandium. Such an act would have made Fulgrim the only person, besides the Emperor, to have killed one of the traitor Primarchs. However, he voluntarily relinquished that honor in favor of a more fitting punishment. Using pre-heresy technology, the Emperor's Children placed the dying Guilliman in a temporal stasis field and returned him to Holy Terra so that the Emperor could witness his eternal torment. The body is housed in the deepest vaults of the Imperial Palace. Though it should be impossible, it is said that the agonies of his final seconds have been felt by generations of astropaths over the millennia. Of Fulgrim's fate, nothing is known for certain. He disappeared without a trace from the inner sanctum of his flagship, the Pride of Chemos. Physical evidence has been found in the chamber, such as etched adamantium panels. Some speculate that his disappearance was caused by some unknown weapon. Others maintain that Fulgrim ascended to another spiritual level, and that his absence is the physical manifestation of that transcendence. Few in the Legion truly believe their Primarch is dead. They only await his return.
While other legions have increased in size and adapted their command structures over the millennia, the Emperor's Children have remained virtually unchanged. They are composed of 30 great companies, the same number that made up the Legion during the campaign against the Laer. Each great company is led by a Lord Commander, an instrument of Fulgrim's will, who directs over 1,000 Marines. Respect for superior officers is ingrained in the psyche of the Emperor's Children, and each successive rank brings its bearer closer to Fulgrim and an unquestionable ideal. The extreme care placed both in the purity of the gene seed and in the quality of new recruits has meant that, even after the betrayal of Istvon, the Emperor's Children never compromised their standards simply to fill the numbers. Similarly, given the time and effort required to produce their revered war gear, it is no surprise that they are, by far, one of the smallest legions. What they lack in numbers is more than compensated for by their incomparable skill. This is something they eagerly seek to demonstrate against the Astartes of other legions, whether in dueling cages or on the battlefield against the Emperor's enemies. Among the Lord Commanders, there exists a strictly defined hierarchy. In Fulgrim's absence, the position equivalent to Chapter Master falls to the Lord Commander of the First Great Company. Even before the heresy, each great company had its own preferred combat style, reflecting the personality of its Lord Commander, something encouraged by Fulgrim himself. This led to unofficial but enduring nicknames for each great company. For example, the 7th Great Company is informally known as the Hawk Lords, for their unmatched skill in aerial warfare, employing packs of raptors and jump bikes.
In addition to dividing like other legions, the Emperor's Children have their own formations and elite or veteran units. Phoenix Guard. The Phoenix Guard was the elite unit that served as Primarch Fulgrim's honor guard during the Great Crusade and the Dorn Heresy. Its members followed their Primarch wherever he went, even within the relative safety of Imperial army ships or those of other legions. Today, the Phoenix Guard continues to fulfill the role of elite bodyguard for the Third Legion's master. Palatine Blade's Brotherhood. Perhaps the most famous example of the Emperor's Children's specialized troops whose renown transcended their own legion. These brotherhoods were not permanent formations, but groupings created for specific battles against enemies deemed worthy. Their members were typically outside the legion's standard ranks. When facing a worthy adversary, senior commanders would assemble the best swordsmen available. Armed with dueling swords, sabers, and weapons that were trophies or relics, these units sought out the enemy's finest warriors on the battlefield. The number and quality of such squads depended on how many Emperor's children were present in a war zone and the quality of their enemy. Sun Killers. A specialized formation composed of the Legion's finest gunners, equipped with powerful plasma cannons to provide heavy support fire. They were formed from the most skilled heavy weapon specialists of the Third. Wings of the Phoenician. Elite companies whose Astartes were personally selected by Fulgrim to be trained in assault tactics and close combat assisted by jump packs. The officer in command of the Wings of the Phoenician was known as the Eagle King. Just Blades. During the era of the Great Crusade, the Just Blades were one of the most decorated and respected infantry units in the Imperial Army. Vassals of Fulgrim, the Just Blades provided lethal infantry support to the Third Legion in countless campaigns, achieving numerous victories. Since then, the Blades have continued to serve as the most prominent mortal warriors accompanying the Third in combat.
For the Emperor's children, war is a matter of perfection embodied in intentions and actions. The Legion takes pride in its excellence on any battlefield, as much as in its ability to replicate any tactic or strategic deployment that is necessary, executing them impeccably when ordered. Of the countless formations and tactics employed by the Emperor's children, one that found favor among the Legion's Praetorians, who sought to achieve an impeccable victory and thereby glory in the eyes of their peers and the Primarch, was the Maru Skara. Marines of the Emperor's children are expected to be competent, moreover, to excel in each and every battlefield role. This means that a battle brother is expected to crew a vehicle with the same skill with which you would fire a heavy weapon or fight in close combat. While this is achieved through incessant training, as in the other loyal legions, the Emperor's children add a distinctive nuance to their regiments, the incorporation of artistic activities. The most obvious benefit of this is their approach to close combat. While the World Eaters are coldly clinical and methodical, with each member combining with mechanical precision, the Emperor's children exhibit a fluid grace born from the study of dance and poetry. They flow across the battlefield, evading blows and projectiles before pouncing on their enemies, falling upon multiple adversaries before the first corpse hits the ground. The Legion's officers are famous for their powerful rhetorical style, honed through intense study of literature, poetry, and oratory arts. Their rejection of certain technological advances has meant that many vehicles commonly used by other legions are absent from the Emperor's children's armories. For them, the ancient and reliable marks, Predator, Rhino, and Land Raider, are more than sufficient. Modifications considered corruptors of the venerable Rhino chassis' purity, such as the Tilvius APC or the brutal Vindicator, are scorned. Even smaller variants of weapon systems, like the Predator Dominator or the Land Raider Incinerator, are rejected. The preference for classic equipment allows the Legion to deploy a notable number of jet bikes. Another example of their fidelity to ancient gear is the Raptor jump pack system. The complexity of manufacturing and maintaining these devices became prohibitive for most Astartes legions. When the STC for the simpler but far less effective DH2 jump pack system was found, only the Emperor's children chose to keep the old model in service.
This rigid adherence to Fulgrim's pre-heresy vision of perfection, combined with the luxury of virtually unlimited access to an entire planet's manufacturing base, is a defining characteristic of the Emperor's Children's combat doctrine. The Emperor's Children believe with absolute conviction in their innate purity and superiority. They cling to Fulgrim's assertion that they achieved perfection just before the heresy, and they refuse to dilute it, whether with inferior weapons and equipment. This obsessive attention to detail means that while the Emperor's Children will never be a numerous legion, each member embodies what it means to be an Astartes. They consider the only being above them to be the Emperor. Though they do not worship him as a god, their respect and admiration for him are unshakable. Fighting alongside allies, such as the Imperial Army or Astartes from other legions, often generates friction. Their sense of superiority can be mistaken for arrogance. Even so, they enjoy demonstrating their skills, but ultimately they feel more comfortable fighting on their own, where they can only fully trust their battle brothers. Perfecting the art of war in all areas, with standards that many consider unattainable, and which they label as arrogance, is the core of their martial traditions. Duels between battle brothers are part of the tradition in many Space Marine legions. For some, they are mere practice and honing. For others, they take on an importance that transcends practical need and become an end in themselves. The combat pits of the World Eaters are an extreme example. For the Emperor's Children, however, the duel is both training and a psychological component, the ultimate expression of skill and prowess, a mirror that reveals the warrior's essence. The weapons used in duels reflect their taste for aesthetics and excellence. Many Emperor's Children carry swords forged by master smiths from thousands of worlds. Among them, the Chernobyl sabers of ancient Terran tradition are especially valued. Forged according to rituals and alchemical formulas, each blade is a unique work. The custom of taking quality weapons from defeated enemies is common in the Legion. If a renowned swordsman finds an exceptional weapon, he takes it as a trophy and practices with it until he masters it completely, a ritual intended to absorb the enemy's spirit. Thus, the Legion's champions wield Rakathian crystal swords, Norvik sync friction axes, sacred Aegissene weapons, Tuonela mortuary swords, Terran gladii, and power swords forged on Mars, among others. There is no prohibition against weapons taken from alien cultures. The only thing that matters is the quality of the weapon itself. Since the gene seed disaster that nearly extinguished the Legion in its early days, the Emperor's Children have devoted obsessive care to analyzing the implants. This solemn task falls to the Legion's apothecaries. From extracting progenoid glands on the battlefield from gravely wounded brothers, to testing, cultivating, and implanting them in new recruits, they are the guardians of Fulgrim's genetic legacy. As a result, the Emperor's Children's gene seed is of unmatched purity, and the 19 implants function as well today as when they were bestowed by the Emperor. Despite the stability of Fulgrim's gene seed, the rigor of the analysis process still results in a relatively high rejection rate. While this is partially offset by an unmatched implantation success rate among the other legions, it means the Emperor's Children are slow to replace fallen brothers. The Legion has been on the brink of destruction twice, and both times it has emerged victorious. They consider this a testament to the strength of their genetic lineage, and a vindication of their zeal in protecting its integrity with extreme intensity. By tradition, one of the progenoid glands is surgically removed as soon as it matures, while the second is extracted only after the Marine's death. The early and selective removal of a progenoid minimizes the chances of it being damaged or contaminated. In the event that some catastrophe destroyed the Legion's gene seed reserves, the surviving battle brothers would donate theirs to continue Fulgrim's lineage. As a Legion that has faced extinction more than once, the Emperor's Children are fully aware of the need to consider these matters.
I don't know what to say about the Emperor's children, other than that they are the living image of perfection. They also represent a past that can never return, and which they have kept intact, both in their ideals and their equipment, which is surprising. I know I haven't talked about some important characters, or Fulgrim himself, of whom I'll only say that, like his legion, he is arrogant and an idiot. I'll just say that, in this universe, the Emperor was not to blame for some Primarchs turning to chaos, or rebelling against the Imperium. Tell me in the comments which other legions you want me to cover, so we can put them to a vote. Give it a like, subscribe, share, and thanks a lot for the support. See you next time, and what happened to the second